I want to welcome someone to the stage. His name is Mike Boyce. He's from Chilean Cornerstone Mission, and I'm excited to have him here. He's definitely somebody that we support as a church, and he's going to come up and share a little bit. I'm going to get you a music stand because I told you that I would, and I forgot, so I'm going to get that right now. But yeah, go ahead and come on over here, and yes, I do need it. It's actually backstage, so I'm going to get that as well. Use this for a moment. Okay. I'll be right back.
Very good. Well, as Seth said, my name is Mike Boyce, and I represent Cornerstone Chilean Mission. If you have heard of Cornerstone Christian Church, I'm actually from AllianceOhio, right down the road.
Here, Mike.
Thank you.
Right up to your mouth. Okay.
And I'm from Cornerstone Christian Church in AllianceOhio. I was actually baptized right here because Cornerstone didn't have a building back then, or a baptistry. And so when I made a decision to follow Christ at 12 years old, I came here to be baptized. So I feel right at home here at Marlborochristianchurch. I came to youth group here because our church was too small to have a youth group. And so I came to youth group here when Rex Morey was the youth minister. That was a few years ago, but I'm glad to be back, and I do feel right at home being here with you all. Marlboro Christian Church was also one of the first churches to support us as missionaries. In fact, before I was a missionary, when I went on my first trip as a Bible college student on an internship to Chile, Marlboro Christian Church supported me then and has supported us all along through the mission. So you are foundational members of our mission, and we are so grateful for your support, for your prayers, and for your perseverance in this work. When we went, that was a leap of faith, because we were young Bible college students, idealistic, novices, heading out onto the mission field for the first time. And you took a step of faith in supporting us, not knowing if we would make it or not. And we're so thankful for that as well. Our mission is to teach and train and encourage churches and ministers in Chile. We equip with materials, we train in the churches, and we encourage people to continue strong and faithful in the ministry. My name is Mike Boyce. My wife is Tabi. She's sitting at a table in the back, and you'll be able to talk with her after the service and get more information about her, and I'm going to be telling you about her ministry as well. We also have two young children, Lydia, who is 7, and Caleb, who is 5, and they're in the Sunday school. Lydia is probably learning and showing off their memory verses, and Caleb is probably destroying whatever room he's in. But that's kind of his job, so we let him do that. So we're happy to be here, and take time to say hi to the family as well, if you care to. Now, whenever I talk about our mission, there are always two really fundamental questions that I get up front, and so I'll address those right away. The first one, of course, is, does it get chilly in Chile? And the answer is yes. We live far enough south of the equator that you can forget about Mexico and tropical jungles and the Amazon and all that. We live far enough south of the equator to be more like Tennessee. And we travel to places that are more like Ohio. We live at that latitude just on the other side of the equator. So in the winter, it gets cool. In the summer, it gets hot. It is a little bit drier than here, but the weather overall is not that much different. We get cold winters, warm summers, we have spring, we have fall. And the biggest difference is that we don't get rain. We get a few days of rain a year, but 9 months of the year are dry with not a cloud in the sky. That is not much like Ohio. But we're happy to be there and working like that. The second question we often get is, do we eat chili in Chile? Yeah. And the answer is no. Once again, it is not like Mexico or Central America in its diet. Chile is a lot more like the U.S. If you want to think of traditional dinners in Chile, you might think of spaghetti or meatloaf or a casserole. Chileans generally do not like spicy food. They don't eat hot peppers. They don't even put black pepper on their food normally. I remember the first time I went to Chile, and they served me mashed potatoes, and I asked for black pepper to put on my mashed potatoes, and people said, "Be careful, that's going to be really spicy." So Chileans really don't eat spicy food. If you can handle food in the United States, you can handle food in Chile. That's pretty cool. So I like to tell people that off the bat so that you get to know a little bit about where we're at. Where we're at is also maybe not what you think of when you think of missionaries. You might think of a jungle. You might think of very poor places in Africa. But where we live is a very different context. We live in a city of Santiago, Chile. It's a city of 7 million people. So if you took Cleveland, Akron, Canton, Youngstown, Mansfield, Alliance, Zanesville, Columbus, and all their suburbs, you would be approaching the city of Santiago, but you'd still be short about 1 million people. So we live in a very urban city. It's a big city. It takes me 45 minutes to cross the city to take Caleb to his speech therapy. It takes me 3 hours to come back at rush hour because it's a big city with all the things you would expect in a big city. In fact, it's a modern city as well. 10 minutes from our house, there's a Walmart. It's in a mall. And with the Walmart, there's a Starbucks. There's a Dunkin' Donuts. There's McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, KFC, Pizza Hut. So when you think of a mission field in a jungle where you're living in a hut, that's not us. We're in an urban city with all the modern conveniences you would expect in an urban city. But our mission is what makes us missionaries. It's not the place that we are, it's the work that we do. In 2 Timothy 2:2, Paul says that Timothy is supposed to pass on what he's learned from Paul to reliable young men who would be able to teach others. And that is the heart of our ministry, is training up young men as future leaders in the church. I believe that Chileans will always be able to reach their own people more effectively than I can. I'll always be an outsider. I do speak Spanish, but everybody knows I'm a gringo the moment I open my mouth. My cultural expectations are a little bit different. My sense of time is a little bit different. The way I spend time and interact with people is a little bit different. And people recognize that difference. Chileans will always be able to reach their own people for Christ better than I can. So rather than reaching out to individuals for Christ, what we do is teach and train leaders, Chilean leaders, who will be able to reach their own people for Christ much more effectively than I ever will. And so when I see them evangelizing, when I see them teaching in their church, when I see them planting a church, that is the fruit of the work that we do. And I'm so grateful to the Lord for the work that we've done so far and what we see as fruit in that. Because I know that we can plant and we can water, but only God gives the growth. And so we're happy to see that taking place in Chile. Tabi does an important work, and I think she's a good example of the way our ministry works. Tabi was born on the mission field. I was born in AllianceOhio. That's not very exotic. Tabi was born on the mission field in Mexico, south of Mexico City. Her parents were missionaries there for 40 years. So she speaks fluent native level Spanish, and she speaks fluent native level English because her parents were American missionaries and they taught her English in the house. So from her childhood, she speaks both languages fluently. She has used those gifts and abilities that God has given her to do translating work. She takes articles and books from English that would be helpful for churches and ministers and translates them into Spanish and makes them available where we're working, putting good, high-quality materials into the hands of Christians and into the hands of Christian ministers in Chile. She developed a blog to put those articles on. She got permission from professors from Bible colleges, from writers with Standard Publishing and the Restoration Herald, and has been putting those onto her blog for close to 10 years now. Her blog reaches over 200,000 people per year. Her outreach goes beyond Chile and throughout the entire Spanish-speaking world, providing high-quality, biblical material that Christians can use to answer their questions, to inform themselves, to be able to minister effectively for Christ. We could never have imagined fruit that big, but we see God working in that ministry. And that ministry has led to an editorial house asking Tabi to translate high-quality books into Spanish. On the table back there, you'll see a sample of a book that she translated, which is a theology book. It is not light reading, and it's certainly not light translating, which she translated into Spanish. It's called What the Bible Says About God Most High. And you can see the sample on the back. And she just finished translating part of a Romans commentary that will be published soon, we hope. And so she is translating those materials that can be used not only in Chile, but around the Spanish-speaking world. And what those do is they help equip Christians and ministers to effectively reach out for Christ. Our mission is really focused on that. The Great Commission says that we are to go out and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you. We found that many missions focus on the first part of that, baptizing them, which is essential. That's the evangelism. That is bringing people to Christ for the first time. But we really put the focus of our mission on the second part, teaching them, because we think that they go hand in hand. We don't want Christians who are an inch deep in Christ, but who have deep roots and deep wells from which to draw so that they can reach out to their family and friends for Christ, so that they can glorify Christ with holy lives, with Christian worldviews. And we strive to see that happen in the churches. Our focus of our mission is on the second part of the Great Commission, teaching. But that doesn't mean we don't do the first part. It just means that the first part, for me, isn't our mission. It's just our Christian life. Every Christian should be sharing Christ in their life. And we do that, not because we're missionaries, but because we're Christians. I was taught early on that that was my job as a Christian, is to reach out to my family, to my friends, to my coworkers with Christ, with his message of salvation and redemption because of what he did on the cross. So we do that where we live. Not because we're missionaries. I would do that anywhere I live because that's my job as a Christian. If I weren't a missionary and I were living in Alliance, I should be reaching out to my family and my friends and my neighbors and my coworkers for Christ. And so we don't happen to be in Alliance. We happen to be in San Bernardo, a suburb of Santiago, Chile. And that's where we do that too. In that regard, we have some friends named Jaime and Maji. Jaime comes from a local Christian church there. He's been a believer for 10 years. And he moved to our neighborhood before we did. And when we moved to the neighborhood, we met him and we got to know their family. They were eager to do something tangible for Christ. So in our neighborhood, we decided to set up a Bible study. A Bible study based on the book of John, where we would present who Jesus is, what he did on the cross and in his resurrection, and what he asks of us today. We invited only non-believers to our Bible study. This is a Bible study not for believers. If you already have a church, you can stay in your church. But if you don't go to church, if you don't know Christ, come and meet Christ and make a decision. The first week we offered the Bible study for non-believers. Who can guess how many people came? The second week that we offered a Bible study only for non-believers, that grew to a whopping 0. The third week that we offered a Bible study for only non-believers, we maintained steady at 0. We were consistent, if nothing else. The fourth week, we prayed and said, Lord, if this doesn't work this week, we'll take that as a sign to move on to a different technique. But the fourth week that we did it, 4 couples showed up for Bible study. 4 couples who did not believe in Jesus, didn't know the gospel, weren't familiar with even the basics of Christian faith. Even though they had been born Catholic, because everybody in Chile is born Catholic, but they knew nothing about the Bible or anything about Christian faith. They maintained that Bible study for 3 years, going through the entire book of John and Acts and Romans. And that Bible study led to planting the church that we have now. We didn't set out to plant a church exactly. We set out to reach people for Christ, because that's our job, not as missionaries, but as Christians. That's my job. That's your job. And if we know who Jesus is, then we are equipped in some regard to do a very simple Bible study showing who Jesus is through the Gospel of John. So Jaime led that Bible study. Jaime started baptizing people into Christ. And we planted a church that way. Our church has maintained that format. We meet around a table just like we did for Bible study. Now we meet in the mornings. Breakfast is served on the table, or several tables now. And people, after our song time and our communion time, people get up and serve themselves breakfast and come and sit around the table. And we share the message in that format with people sitting around the table, looking one another in the eyes, seeing their reactions, prodding each other if they fall asleep. And that happens everywhere in the world. And growing in Christ together like a family. Our church grew. We planted it in 2018, and within 1 year, it had grown to 40 people. The pandemic hit it very hard. We dropped down to 10, and now we're growing again, running about 20. But it has been an encouraging time to see that going. The church does take some of my time as a missionary because I do visiting. I'm an elder in the church. I do half of the preaching in the church, and I do Bible studies and other things that have to be done in the church. So that does end up being part of my mission. But we didn't plant it and we didn't do the Bible study because we're missionaries, but because we're Christians. And I want to drive that home because sometimes I think it's easy to think, well, we hire a minister to go do that. But it isn't the minister's job to do all of the evangelism. It's our job, every one of us as Christians, to be out sharing Christ with the people in our sphere of influence. The main thrust of my mission is teaching and training leadership. I go into the churches and I offer free or very low cost Bible study, teaching and training to raise up young men to be ministers for Christ. That's the heart of what I do, and that's what I love to do. I want to offer Bible college level classes, but not at a Bible college level cost because people in Chile would not be able to afford that. So I go into churches and I offer these classes at low cost or free in order to make that available for all people. I teach a variety of classes. This is kind of the boring part, but it's important. I teach a variety of classes, including how to study the Bible, how to preach, Christian doctrine, history of the church, and I give a complete Bible study, a complete Bible college type education in an informal setting for average people, starting from wherever they are and raising them up to the skills and knowledge needed to be ministers for Christ. That's the heart of what I do. That is what I love to do. It's not exciting work, but it is important work. This is where we strengthen the local church. And here in the United States, we're blessed because our movement has Bible colleges. And the Bible colleges form up ministers, and then our churches look for a good minister and hire a good minister to come and be part of the church and work with us. And that is a tremendous blessing from the Lord. But in Chile, they don't have that. And when Chileans who were interested in ministry come to the United States to study, they generally don't go back. When they've been sent to Bible colleges here in the U.S., they have to pay the bills. They take out student loans that they have to pay back. And that makes it very hard to go back to Chile where the churches do not pay their ministers. The ministers usually pay to run the church from their secular full-time jobs. So Jaime, who I mentioned before, in our local church, He has a full-time job as a software engineer, developing bots to answer Facebook texts for banks and other enterprises. And out of what he makes as a software engineer, he also helps to minister for the church by paying for the rental, by making sure that the church has what it needs. That's very different from the U.S. model. And so once people come and study here, it's very hard for them to go back to Chile. So it's very important for us to be giving the quality training in Chile at low cost so that people don't have to come here to study. That ministry has grown over the years. I started off just in our local church with one class, and I now have a very full curriculum that I take around the country teaching in different local churches. I have over 200 hours of content on YouTube, but I keep that private and I only share it with people as they require it. I do that so that they feel, so they have something that they can go back over, but it's kind of a reward for having gone through the actual work of the course. And so I keep it private for that reason. And also so people can feel free to ask questions and not feel embarrassed that that's going to be online forever for everybody to see. And so we do that as well. I'm going to spend a few minutes now telling about how life has been for us over the last few years. I believe that it's important for missionaries to be very honest and open about what we do and some of the setbacks that we face. And the pandemic, like here, was a setback for us as well. First of all, just before the pandemic, our country started a political upheaval in October of 2019, I think it was. Or was it 18? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, the political upheaval started where we had rioting on the streets, martial law was declared, tanks were rolling down the streets, there were battles between the protesters and the military, all the stores were looted, 300 supermarkets were burned down, leaving some towns and communities without any supermarkets, banks, or pharmacies. Things got pretty rough for a little while there. After that, they had a national vote in which Chileans voted to overturn their constitution and write a new constitution. The new constitution was written by communists and was quite radical. It got voted down just 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we're very thankful to the Lord for that, giving us some stability. In the meantime, the pandemic started, and Chile embraced a pretty authoritarian style lockdown. Here, you had the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, of course. We were in full quarantine for over 250 days, where we were not allowed to leave even our yard or sidewalk. The streets were off limits. They developed a website where we had to sign up anytime we wanted to leave our house to go to the grocery store or something like that. We had to say when we were going. We were given 2 hours, and the police were allowed to track our route to and from the grocery store to make sure we didn't leave those roads and go off course. And then we had 2 hours to get everything done that we needed, all our banking and grocery stores, pharmacies, and all that. If you've ever been in Latin America, 2 hours is not enough. We can easily stand in line for 2 hours to pay our rent at the bank every time we go. So that made it very difficult for people in our church, since they were new believers and didn't have deep roots yet. The faith of a lot of them was shaken by that, and they weren't able to go to church for 2 years. We did go online, just like you all, and so we had Facebook and Zoom going, and we still have Zoom going even this morning. But that did hurt our church. We went from 40 members down to 10 during the pandemic. We're back up to 20 now that things are starting to loosen back up. It also hurt my classes because I traveled around the country to teach, and unfortunately I was unable to do that during the pandemic. There were military controls all over the place so that I couldn't travel. And several of the people that were helping me teach left the country in favor of other countries that weren't as restrictive. And so I lost a lot of my help, as well as being limited in my movement. So we have had some setbacks over the last few years, but we're thankful that things are starting to open up again, and we are getting back onto track. Our church is growing again. Just before we came back to the United States, I was able to get back into doing in-person seminars and starting to reactivate that spirit. After we came back from the U.S., we got a call from one of the churches saying, "Hey, where are you? We need you back here so that we can do some more training. I got some young guys who are ready. They are hungry. They want to learn. They want to study. They want to become preachers. Where are you?" "I'm in the U.S. doing this, but as soon as we get back, I'll be there." And so we're looking forward to getting back to Chile and getting re-engaged in the work of teaching and training young men for the ministry. Our mission is a mission of equipping, a mission of training, a mission of encouraging. But I wanted to say again how thankful we are and how encouraged we are by the support that Marlboro has offered to us. We want to also say that we have brochures and business cards in the back that you can look at and find our social media contacts if you'd like to follow us more closely and learn more about us and our ministry on a day-to-day basis. Facebook is the best way to do that. You can also send us an email if you want to get our email newsletters, which we send out not as frequently as we should, but we do send out email newsletters informing of what we're doing on usually 3 or 4 times a year. And we do really appreciate getting a note of encouragement or a message on Facebook to let us know that you're thinking about us. We know that there are a lot of things, life gets busy and hectic, but it is encouraging to us to know that people are aware of us and praying for us and following up on who we are and what we do. Apart from that, I was talking with some folks here at Marlboro about partnering with your church a little bit more in doing some audio-visual outreach and helping us to create high-quality content that we can put on YouTube and other platforms online where we can reach out to more people digitally and virtually rather than in person. Given the post-pandemic world, that's important. Everybody on Chile is online and has high-speed internet, or almost everybody. And so that is a good method that we have available, but I don't have the skills and ability to do that. So I've been talking with people here at Marlboro about helping us with that. You're also always welcome to swing by our place anytime you're traveling through Santiago, Chile. It is on the way to Antarctica, if you happen to be going that way, and just about nothing else. But it is a beautiful place. There are some pictures in the back if you'd like to see pictures of what Chile looks like. It is a beautiful place, and I highly recommend it. But you're always welcome to stop by if you happen to be in the neighborhood. But seriously, we do thank you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. And we look forward to partnering with Marlboro in more tangible ways as we move forward in our ministry. Thank you.
No, that was great. I loved hearing everything that he was talking about. I think it's so crucial that we remember that Christianity doesn't stop at the borders of America, but it is a worldwide, international, world-taking belief. We know that God created the world, that God created every human, not just the ones that we see that look like us or that speak our same language. And so the work that they do and the work that all the rest of our missionaries do that we support is so critical to what God is doing in the world. And so I think it's awesome how you guys have continued to partner with us and with them. And I would encourage you to seek them out today as soon as we finish. Band, if you're around, go ahead and come on out. We're going to wrap up with a song. But make sure you stop back there and talk to Mike and Tabi, see how they're doing. And if you are on Facebook, I encourage you to connect with them. They're always posting things, talking about stuff, sharing the life of their kids and what God's doing in their community. So let's stand and we'll be finished today.